Come, spell weavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your RPG treasure trove. I'm your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and joining us this evening, you guys know him, you love him, you've seen him on Twitter, you've seen him on YouTube, he does his own live streams, he does Gonzo Up Your Ass with Venger Satanis. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Aaron the Pedantic.
How's it going? And I'm just going to say, loving me is probably a stretch, but they may have heard of me.
You know him, you tolerate him, you throw darts at his picture on your wall. Yeah.
There we go. There we go. That's better. That's better.
In a lot of ways, I felt like this conversation has been inevitable for quite some time because at some point I'm going to give up just mentioning how old everyone in the OSR movement is, because I think every time I do, those of you who watch me are just like, hey! But we are two young guys making content in the OSR world, so I'm glad that we could finally bring this together and show up here on Rollin' Bones together.
Heck yeah. Yeah, it's surprising just how many younger folks there actually are that are into all this stuff. Whenever I started running my public old school essentials game, I was surprised to find just how many people were, like maybe younger than me, actually. We had some people in their 20s. I think we had one person that was like late teens, like 19, 18, something like that. But for the most part, it does tend to be 40s, 50s, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think there's a real thirst for something beyond what 5th edition or either edition of Pathfinder can offer that the OSR has, and that's one of the reasons why I love the OSR so much. But we'll get into that in great detail, I imagine, tonight. But to start things off, let's begin here at the beginning and ask you these questions everyone gets asked when they come on Rollin' Bones. So, Aaron, how did you get into RPGs in general?
Okay. So how did I get into RPGs in general? Well, I've always been interested in RPGs just because I've been a big fan of fantasy for, ever since I was a kid. I didn't read Tolkien. I didn't read Harry Potter or anything like that. I landed on, I think there's a book called The Transil Saga was one of them that I read that I really liked. I think it was Gary Paulson. I can't remember the author's name. And a few others that were really kind of more Appendix N inspired. Eventually, I found my way liking the Drizzt novels, even though I didn't really know much about D&D, other than, there's elves and stuff apparently. And I didn't exactly grasp what D&D was until really I was about to start playing it. Honestly, before that, I had played the video games. I had played Neverwinter Nights. I had played Demon's Stone. Baldur's Gate, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know exactly like what you do whenever you play D&D, other than just the little 8-bit D&D Flash movie. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Vaguely.
Okay, it's pretty funny. I recommend sometime you look it up. It's just a rendition of some cliche people playing D&D and Mountain Dew and Doritos and roll to see if I'm getting drunk, if there are any girls in the tavern I want to do them, that kind of thing. But anyway, like that's like the most I really knew about it. It wasn't until one of my friends, well actually now friends, but basically my wife was invited to a D&D game And she was like, "Well, I want to see if my boyfriend at the time, me, would be interested in going, and can he come too?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess." They were saying there weren't enough women there, so they needed to try and up the female count, increase the estrogen in the air, and they're like, I guess we'll accept the man too. And she's like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I was like, yeah, I've been wanting to forever. So, ironically, what brought me here is technically, in a way, Critical Role. It's kind of what got me there, because the only reason that game was being run was because the DM came out of retirement after, I assume, running 3rd edition. I don't think he did 4th edition. I don't know that he was around in 2nd. But he was like, "Wow, this Critical Role thing is cool, and 5th edition sounds cool, so I'm going to run a game." And then next thing you know, there's this game that I'm invited to, and I fall in love with the damn thing. Although I start saying, there's something kind of weird about this 5th edition and this Critical Role stuff. It doesn't, fit the fiction that I grew up with, that I fell in love with, So that's basically how I got started. And that was not terribly long ago. I've only been in the biz for about 4 or 5 years, somewhere in there.
Gotcha. Do you ever joke that your wife was a diversity hire?
I have never made that joke, but I will now. Chelsea, you're a diversity hire. She's okay with that. As long as she gets a job. I don't think you're allowed to be on here. Go away. Go away. No women allowed. This is D&D talk. Yo. We hired you to be the poster child. Make it look like we care about women.
Yeah. We just need you on the brochure.
Yes.
It is always fun to play D&D with your spouse. It was the reverse for me. I had to kind of force my wife to play in a game that I was running, but that can be an interesting set of circumstances, especially when you're behind the screen.
Yeah. I'm interested in how that turned out. Clearly you didn't do so bad that she ran away. So you're...
No, she's still here, fortunately. But I was accused. I ran a game for my whole family at one point just because I was finally able to convince everyone to, play some D&D and see what this crazy thing that Ryan is into is all about. And I was accused in that game of showing favoritism to my wife, but it was a joking criticism and everyone had fun anyway, so it ended up being pretty good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've had a little bit of game time with family members, but for the most part, they're it's just not their cup of tea. The most I've been able to success I've had is the wife. She actually really loves D&D. It's just a matter of having the time to play, and then my oldest daughter is like mildly interested. She's amused by it, even though she's a little murder hobo.
Seems like all kids would kind of start, or most kids would start in that particular position. I know one of my friends runs games for kids after school, and he says like a lot of them will immediately be like, "I want to cut the tooth out of the dragon," or "I want to do this insanely dark thing spawned from the anarchic imagination of a child," just because they can, because they were told they could do anything.
Yeah, so basically, I have 3 daughters, and my oldest was the one that wanted to be the murder hobo. She's also one that wants to just take no time to just go to the next room and see what's in the next room, and she has no patience whatsoever. The other 2, they're both around 6 and 7, that area, and for them, I'm all like, "Yeah, you get back home and there's a dragon living in your house," and they're all like, "Oh, well, I'm going to find you a new place to live, dragon. Don't you worry." So completely different tone, completely different direction, And with that one, I wasn't running like D&D. It was just roll a dice and, tell me what your powers are and we'll do whatever. But they had fun with that. So.
Now, of the game systems that you've played, from your very beginnings up until now, what would you say is your favorite, if you had to pick one?
Okay. So I'm gonna have to say Dungeon Crawl Classics, just because that one is I can use that for just about any purpose and really love it as far as having a fantasy game, because it's such a simple chassis that you can just put whatever you want on it, but it still has enough meaningful stuff on there to end up with really interesting things that you can shake from that tree. Um, the way that you have the warriors with their mighty deeds makes for a situation that it's never really boring to play a warrior, because 5 to 10% of the time, maybe eventually even higher than that, you're having awesome crits where you might even just decapitate somebody in a single blow. And I've had it happen, at the table a couple times. You're being able to just declare that you're going to do this cool thing, and as long as you roll the die, the deed die well enough, that then something cool is going to happen. It's not just a standard attack, and I like that whenever you're having combat rounds that are so short, as opposed to like the 1 minute long. With that, it's like, it kind of doesn't make as much sense. But with 6 seconds to 10 seconds, it's like, we're doing blow for blow. So you knock them down, you strike from above, all that kind of stuff. The wizards, the way that it handles wizards, makes it where like wizards are always going to be kind of interesting. They're always going to feel a little bit different than the last one you played. There are a lot of systems that do that, but that was DCC was the first one since I played 5th edition, other than Dragon Age RPG, that I felt like kind of had wizards feel a little bit more special. 5th edition, the wizards are just like, well, you get a cool little perk or two, and you get to actually write spells from your college in your spell book a little bit cheaper. It's like negligible cost anyway.
Yep.
So it's like, who gives a shit about what college of wizard I am, generally speaking. So DCC makes that incredibly interesting. The cleric doesn't feel, just like I don't know, like a holy magic wizard thing. Like, I'm not knocking the old school Vancian magic casting of clerics, because I like that as well. I like it in the older stuff more so than in 5e. But the way that they handle the lay on hands and the cure diseases and things like that, you feel more like you are a miracle worker rather than somebody who's just having access to a certain kind of spell. Just recently, somebody was making an argument about how they feel like wizards should have access to healing magic, and I'm like, well, you wouldn't really be having that thought process if it weren't treated like it's just another spell. And then thieves are okay, I guess. They're the way that they handle luck, and just the luck system in DCC makes thieves really darn cool. So, I mean, all around, there's just nothing but good shit in DCC.
Oh, yeah.
And that's probably why I'd have to go with that. It's just very punchy. You can have an awesome campaign. You can have an awesome few sessions. It it does get a little wacky in the higher levels. But that's to be expected.
Yeah, Dungeon Crawl Classics is the first book I've read where the wizard truly, like, every time you cast a spell, there's this sensation of, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. This could end up going very, very bad for me. And I love the fact, like, magic, people don't think about this very often. A lot of times people just think of magic as a superpower, basically. But magic, if you think about it the way that the Appendix N fantasy writers wrote about it, you are literally wielding the forces of creation and destruction as a mere mortal. You better hope that you made the right hand gesture and that you use the right components and all this, and that everything goes off perfectly without a hitch. Otherwise, someone other than your intended target is going to be maimed, injured, or killed in some grotesque way, including yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it's even a fantastic expression of the system when even if you do your spell properly, if they try to counterspell you, then you could end up having this cataclysmic event happen. You know, you can get warped into another dimension and have a wizard duel, over a lake of fire or something like that until one of you dies.
Oh yeah.
It's just great. It just completely encapsulates these awesome feelings that, yeah, you're right. They're just not there whenever we just look at it like, oh, it's a superpower. Pew, pew,
Yeah. And then with the clerics, just to kind of echo what you said, Professor Dungeon Master, if you're familiar with his content, he has a whole video on clerics and how 5e doesn't do a great job of saying that, a cleric is not going to be as willing to heal you if you don't necessarily, line up with their beliefs. You don't even, worship their god or, anything like that. He even says, there should be a certain day of the week you don't adventure because that's your holy day. DCC, while it doesn't do all of that, does a lot of that great and does a lot of that, has a lot of that flavor already built into what a cleric is, especially with these powers work better on people who match your alignment, whereas it's a little bit trickier to do this to the chaotic thief than it would be to the lawful good fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as we like to say that people are going to be great players that will take those into consideration, they'll be like, oh, we are of differing alignment. Maybe I shouldn't heal you. It does actually speak for itself whenever you have those things built in mechanically, because, DCC is one of the few times that I've run a game where I didn't have to remind the players, that they need to be thinking about those kinds of things. They need to be thinking about alignment. DCC is like, yeah, you're going to think about it, all right, because your healing is actually going to be quite inadequate, and there's a pretty good chance that you might piss off your deity. So,
absolutely. And shout out to Crafty Matt Craft here in chat with the Robert E. Howard reference. I definitely appreciate that. Hither came Ryan. I appreciate it. I appreciate it greatly. I've talked about this with several times on the show and stuff. I don't think I know I haven't told you this. You might have seen it somewhere. I am actually related to Robert E. Howard very distantly.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. It is one of my favorite things to brag about.
I don't have anything cool like that.
One of my favorite things to brag about that I have absolutely no sense of pride, or shouldn't have a sense of pride in. It's like when George Carlin talked about being proud of your country, you're proud of something accidental.
Yeah.
That's that for me.
Yeah, but you know what? It's still cool. It's cooler than anything I happen to have. So it is great kudos to you, sir. For your name and circumstance.
And Crafty Matt, all Conan and Howard fans are welcome here. Even if you like the Jason Momoa movie, you can hang out with us. It's fine.
I couldn't get past the opening with Ron Perlman doing. There was something that he did in very early on. I can't remember. It was just so goofy. I couldn't handle it. It was right before he died. It's right before Ron Perlman's character died.
I can't remember that either.
I was so sad too because I wanted to like it. I love. Now I'm a heathen bastard. I own a few Conan books. I haven't read them yet. And as far as the movies go, I've watched the old Conan movies. So I need to enlighten myself. I have yet to do so, but when I've always loved the old Conan movies with Arnie. And so whenever I saw that there's one with Jason Momoa, I was like, oh, Jason Momoa, that dude's cool. He's going to do a great job, right? And then no, I ended up turning it off within 15 minutes. Thank God I didn't pay for it.
One thing that I will say, since you're so wrapped up and involved in RPGs, I recommend that you start with the story The Tower of the Elephant because as soon as you read that story, every aspect of a dungeon crawl and where that concept came from will automatically make sense.
Okay. Yeah, I had that happen for me whenever I read Jewels in the Forest, Fritz Lieber, um, the Fafhrd and Grey Mouser
Oh yeah.
story. And then I also decided I was going to have a ceiling try and kill people in one of my dungeons because, you can't read that and then not be like, well, I'm never going to use that.
Oh, Bowser Juice here in chat. Honestly, yeah, I agree with you. Momoa does not have any range. And yeah, I definitely yeah, I love that Dune movie. I really did enjoy it. I'm a huge Dune fan, but he really was just kind of playing himself. It worked for Duncan Idaho because Duncan Idaho does not have a whole lot to him, I'll say. He's just kind of there in the book, but yes, he was Jason Momoa. Now, moving on from there, because if we fall down the Dune rabbit hole, we'll be here all night. When we play these games for a long time, we start to kind of develop our own styles, both as players and GMs. So, if you had to describe your play style as a GM and as a player, how would you do so?
Okay, well, I'll start with GM. So, my playstyle as a GM, I mean, I'm still developing my craft. I'm not one of these people that has been doing this for decades and decades and has seen and heard almost it all, and all that kind of stuff. There's still a lot of kinks that I end up having to iron out. So a lot of times, my general style is that I try to be as forthcoming as I possibly can about how I do things, and as impartial as I can. Because one of the things that I learned whenever I was starting to run games at first was that I can be a huge damn pushover. And that doesn't make for fun games, in my opinion. If you have the ability to, browbeat your DM into, having every advantage that you want, then ultimately you're not really engaging in the environment as it was designed. Most likely, you're eking out every little benefit. And so, a lot of what I've tried to do is try and use procedures and things like that in order to allow myself to be less partial and just be like, okay, there's probably like this percentage likelihood that would be the case or something like that whenever it's something that's not accounted for or whatever, something I didn't expect, because that's a lot of times how they get you is something that you just didn't expect at all, that just completely blindsides you, and then you're left having to think completely on your feet. And there would be times where they would propose something, and I would be like, "Oh yeah, there's no reason why that," or whatever. So, I guess being forthright about how I do things, being honest with my roles, showing the roles. Like the only time I ever use a Dungeon Master screen now is basically if I legitimately have charts that I need on there. I don't use them to obscure my roles. I'll roll in public. There are some roles that I'll do privately. Those are the ones that in first edition, basically Gary says you should roll privately. The ones like hiding in shadows and those kinds of things. Whenever the players do those kinds of roles, because they don't need to know if they're successful. That's it would actually be not in their best interest to know.
Right.
But I guess I would say open-ended. I don't like railroad stuff. I feel guilty if I introduce them into a scenario that is incredibly railroaded. In fact, they're actually, it's one of the unfortunate things about DCC is that while a lot of their content they have fantastic adventures in a lot of ways, some of them are incredibly railroady. And so I had some episodes of pure frustration whenever I'm running a scenario and I'm like, wow, this thing really expects me to just funnel them in, to this very specific outcome at every step, and I just hated it. So I tend to favor more open-ended play whenever I'm running things. Honestly, whenever I'm playing things too. Whenever I'm a player, I'd say that I tend to kind of sit in the background for the most part, and make sure that everybody gets a chance to do their thing. I don't know why I do that. I guess like I just don't want to step over everybody or anything like that. And I usually try and find a niche that hasn't been, grabbed very well. I try to make that my thing and do it very well. So a lot of times that ends up with me being a cleric because I like being a cleric, and a lot of times other people don't like being a cleric. So I end up doing that and just trying to play the hell out of it, and I usually try to play into archetypes. That was one of the things. When I first started playing, I wanted to subvert archetypes all the time. I wanted to be the orc sorcerer, the orc wizard, that kind of thing, and trying to be, I don't know, like the happy-go-lucky good guy warlock, that sold his soul to the devil, that kind of thing. And nowadays, it's not so much as interesting to me. Nowadays, it's a lot more interesting to lean into the archetypes, to play, the courageous, charismatic leading fighter, that just loves the thrill of battle and all that kind of stuff. And then to find the subtleties about the character that's interesting and let that develop over the course of play rather than be something that I predetermined. So I think that about covers it.
Yeah, I definitely need to shout out the archetypes thing. I think what we need is a renaissance of archetypes. We need people to realize that those things became not cliche, but they're things that people rely on in stories for a reason. They've lasted this long and become the standard for a reason. And it's because they work. It's because they work well, and they give you a good foundation. They make sense, and they allow you to then expand on the firm foundation that you have built of the, like you said, courageous, charismatic leading warrior, or the kind of the dark and brooding warlock who sold his soul to the devil. All of these things, they fit, they work, they make sense, and once you have that foundation, you can then build on it. But if your foundation's weird and lopsided, then everything you build on it's going to be weird and lopsided.
Yeah, that's tended to be the thing that I've noticed, because I do play with a lot of people that they still like to do the subverting stuff, and what I tend to notice is that a lot of times it feels very two-dimensional and gimmicky, and so because of that, it kind of seems to grow a little stale. I don't. A lot of times, they, and I honestly, I hope that none of the people that play with me stumble on this. But like one of the things that sometimes some of the people I play with will say is, man, I love your character. Your character is so interesting, or whatever. And it's like, my character's literally just a grumpy old wizard. He's just a grumpy wizard who wants to know as much as he can because it makes him powerful, and he's kind of an asshole. Like that's it. It's like you could get that from Jack Vance, and and it didn't require much thought at all. Or people that liked my cleric. I mean, in that case, the players in that game, in the my second edition game, like they understand archetypes and leaning into those things and stuff like that. But like a lot of they've said that they liked my character, and my character was basically like, well, okay, I'm an agriculture nature-based cleric that it has a low intelligence, so I'm going to make him sound like a dumb redneck, and I can do that because I'm a Texan. Mm-hmm. So, I have that privilege. Mm-hmm. But I'm
a North Carolinian. I'm right there with you.
Heck yeah!
We should not have the barbecue conversation. Neither of us are going to be happy with that outcome.
Probably not. I'm not a big barbecue purist. I just love eating it. So, Although I do think that sauce belongs on barbecue. I do. There are a lot of people I know that are like, just smoke it and the meat's fine. And you don't. If you have to put barbecue sauce on it, then you did it wrong or whatever. But I say screw those people. I like my sauce.
Absolutely. And I will say that the best brisket I ever had was in Texas. So there's that.
You'll have to let me know where you got it.
It was hard to eat. I went to the one in Coppell. It was actually at North Texas RPG Convention.
Oh, okay. I'll have to see if I can find that place sometime.
I've heard that there are a couple just kind of around the DFW area. I don't know how like far and wide they are or what town specifically they're in. I just know the one that was closest to North Texas RPG Con was the one that was over in Coppell, and it was the first time I'd ever been. It was the first time I'd ever been to Texas. Was that convention, and so I drove over there, and I was just like, this neighborhood is nice.
Yeah. Speaking of, how did you feel about North Texas RPG Con?
Oh, I loved it. That is the best convention experience I have ever had, and I got to play Deadlands with Shane Hensley, the creator, at another convention. So for it to dethrone that is, that was a fun convention.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I'm just kind of depressed that I didn't catch more of it, because I arrived like Saturday, I don't know, afternoon, and I stayed there until maybe like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night or something like that. And I didn't even get to make it, to the midnight auction, which sucks because I heard that that's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I slept in a little bit too much on Sunday. And then by the time I got there, a lot of people were packing up and leaving. I was like, what the crap? Y'all didn't tell me you were going to do this, And I was scrambling for some last minute interviews. I got to sit down with Matt Finch for a while, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Matt's a great guy. I love Matt.
He is. That's what's really awesome is, a lot of these OSR creators, they're just chill, humble people, like they just want to talk with you about games and share the love, and it's a beautiful thing. None of them seem to have, none of them, their heads are too big or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll take the time and talk to somebody that they've never heard of before. So that's cool. I appreciated that.
Yeah,
at least I would have been surprised if he had heard of me, because I feel like I'm too edgy. But
it's a fun and unique experience to just be like walking around the hallways, and then you turn a corner and there's Zeb Cook just walking around amongst the people.
Yep. I was a little bit starstruck by some of them. That's to be sure. Like with Janelle Jaquays, the most I was able to manage was, "Hey, I like your work," and then I walked away. She was like, "Thanks," But yeah, everybody was really cool, and I'm really looking forward to going next year. Next year, I'm gonna actually take time off. I'm gonna run games there. I'm gonna do it properly, so that way I can get the full experience rather than just like maybe 12 hours worth, when most of the people are already heading out or too busy.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hope I get to go this year. There are circumstances that might prevent me being able to go, but I hope I get to go.
I hope you do too. It'd be cool to get to play with you, man.
Absolutely. And if I go, I will be running something. Nice.
Any idea what you would run?
Yeah, so I'm working on a game called Nighthaven right now. It's a setting / series of adventures. Right now it's just in 5th edition because that's what I'm most familiar with. Mm-hmm. It's kind of my attempt to OSRify 5th edition and to add a little bit of like Lankmar into 5th edition.
Okay.
But at some point I'd love to be able to like turn it into a DCC setting and have like DCC modules for it. Those are really the two places that I'd focus would be, DCC and 5th edition. Mm-hmm. But right now it's still, I'm developing it. That's the game we're playing on the stream every now and then, and so it would be something in Nighthaven.
Okay. So how far into it are you as far as the development goes?
I have everything worked out. I just need to put it into a document.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. So did you like redo the class structure, or are they just like new subclasses, or?
So everything's the same. It's a lot of just like recommendations,
Mhm.
and there are a couple different supplements that people have put out that make 5e work a little bit more like an OSR game. The
Mhm.
best one that I've run into is 5e Hardcore Mode
Mhm.
by Hanker Infernal. It's very good. It really does kind of make 5e feel a little bit more like 1e or like second edition AD&D. It really is a cool system that simplifies a lot of things and makes it feel more old school and a lot more deadly.
Mhm. Yeah, that seems to be a lot of the thing that people are clamoring for with fifth edition that they don't seem to feel satisfied with is that it's just a little bit too forgiving. So I mean that tends to be the focus, is the desire to make it a more deadly game. But one of the things that I've been really enjoying, with first edition and second edition is the inclusion of things that make like time and money and your consumption thereof in the game. Just the progression of things, and try and make the world come to life, make you take your time
Mm.
developing the campaign and having all kinds of different factors that feature in. I feel like that's something that could also be interesting to see more of. If I were to do something for 5e, like my own try to take on the system, it would probably be something to bring that stuff into effect. I kind of thought that's what they were going to do with the level up 5e thing, but I had a peek at it, and it looks like it's just glorified more combat complexity for the most part. Which I'm like, I mean, I could take that, I guess, but I I don't. That's not really what I would want to see. That doesn't make 5e any better to me personally.
Yeah, the complexity of combat is not my issue with 5e combat.
Mhm.
5e combat is as simple as it needs to be. The problem is it just takes too long.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, adding complexity is not gonna it's not gonna do you any favors, really.
Yep.
Uh, yeah. So how do you feel about those kinds of resource, not really resource, but like the domain mechanics and things like that from like AD&D, and the things that make you um, find more ways for the players to spend money, to constantly desire money, and be thinking of what they're going to do with what time they have and all that kind of stuff.
I do really like that particular side of things because there is a point at which you're just like, what do we do with all this money?
Yeah.
Especially in fifth edition, where it's very easy to just. I've heard people call it Monty Hall style games. I'm
Mhm.
very guilty of this, where you're just like magic items, money.
Mhm.
Here's everything your heart could ever desire, everything to make you as amazing as possible. And then they're just like, now what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah, I've had it pretty bad with that. I'm usually the one who's desiring to have the DM be not generous at all, and to actually be kind of a pain in the ass. And instead, a lot of times, what I get is them just throwing stuff at me. Like I've even had GMs actually just say, "Hey, so you stumble on a horde of magic items. Pick the ones that you want." And I'm like, what do I see there? And they're like, no, go into the Dungeon Master's Guide
Oh, no, no.
and pick the ones you want. And I'm like, what? That's not how this is supposed to work. Like, and plus I don't feel like I earned this. So I, there are people that they play the game for the social interaction, with other players. They play it for the ability to express their character, to do the voice, to write their fanfic backstories and stuff like that. And like they're going to be happy with 5e being played that way, even with the Monty Halls and whatever, probably. But there are different tastes, and my particular taste is I like to feel like I earn everything I get, that I'm being properly challenged, and that the world is something that we can delve into in a real significant way, and we're not just like hitting little tourist attractions on this grand epic adventure path that is being laid out before us. I don't like being just actors in a play, basically.
Absolutely. Crafty and Matt's making some good points here in chat. There definitely is a lot of onus on the DM to make sure that you're not just kind of overpowering your players just on that side. With the no ammo or weight tracking, I try to do that in a very common sense way. I do make players track their ammo. I don't make them explicitly track the amount of poundage they're carrying, just because that's a lot. What I do with that is common sense, where if someone's just like picking up a lot of weapons, I'm going to be like, how many weapons are you carrying right now? And if they're like, oh, I got like 2 long swords and stuff, I'm going to be like, no. You got to drop something on the ground right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to go. I don't know if you've ever seen there are a few different RPGs that have done this, but Lamentations of the Flame Princess has it's basically a point system. So it kind of breaks down, like a big item is this many points, a small item is this many points, and then like this many coins will be 1 point, and then like you get a bonus to how many points you can carry based on your strength. And so it makes it a little bit easier. Then I've also seen some that do like slot systems, and those I don't really I'm okay with coin weight. I did that with Old School Essentials. I'm going to do that with AD&D. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I'm not offended if we use some kind of abstractions to make the process easier on the players, and make it so that they're not actually having to count the pennies and all that kind of stuff. I don't mind doing it whenever I'm a player in my second edition game, even though we use Roll20, and a lot of that stuff I think it calculates for you. I not necessarily, because I do have to like tweak some stuff here and there, but even then it's not a big bother for me. But I'm not a purist about it either. And depending on the game you play, it might not even be a big deal at all. Like I wouldn't give people a hard time for not doing any kind of encumbrance tracking at all. I mean, it's just a matter of what if you're going to get something out of it, basically. That's the main thing.
Yeah, it's one of those mechanics that's there so that you aren't able to just like have a weapon for every single possible situation. You're gonna find yourself in situations where you have the wrong weapon for what you're going up against, and in that case, I'm gonna like common sense rule it, but I'm never gonna expect anyone to like actually keep track of the weight number itself, just because there's a certain amount of, we're here to have fun, we're not here to do math, even though we're having fun doing math. But it's little things like that where abstractions, hand waving, that kind of stuff is where I would land on that. But there needs to be something there. Otherwise, you're going to have the monster that's immune to slashing damage, and someone's going to be like, well, it's a good thing I brought my rapier. You're like, where were you keeping that rapier?
Yeah, I will say this. I have had a few instances where encumbrance played a very interesting role in things. So in Old School Essentials, which is basically just BX for anybody who listens who doesn't know, one of the things that they have on there is basically the more weight you have, the slower your movement speed is going to be. And whenever you compare that compared to the monsters and all that kind of stuff, what ends up happening is, yeah, your magic user is very poorly protected, but they sure can run a hell of a lot faster than your fighter, because your fighter's got on plate, and chances are they're carrying around heavy weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to get eaten? And so actually, I had a player once say, Aaron, with these rules, like, we can never outrun the monsters. And I'm like, no, you really can't. You can drop some gold or drop some food and hope that they fall for it. Or you can trip whoever you like the least. And that's about it.
Absolutely. And
as long as, like I said, as long as it adds to your game. If it doesn't add to your game, if you're not interested in that kind of dynamic, then skip it. Who gives a shit?
Absolutely. And Crafty Matt made another point here in chat. A lot of DMs really just kind of ignore that the DMG exists. I will say, for most DMs, it's just a list of magic items, because that's where they're kept. But yeah, there's a lot of, if you really dig into your DMG, there is a lot of good stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff they'd thought of, because originally, going all the way back to I guess 2014 was when they first put those books out. 5e was supposed to OSRify D&D again. It was very influenced by a lot of the OSR stuff that had come out in the wake of 3.5 and 4e. And so a lot of that desire was still there, but it's just kind of gradually been beaten out of the game as things have gone on, and the influence of Critical Role and stuff like that has turned it into we're just friends sitting around telling a story.
God, I hate that. I don't know if we. So yeah, Critical Role, I think, plays a pretty strong effect in it. But Wizard of the Coast has been really, really making it easy. Like anytime they're doing their tweets, they're doing their videos. Dungeons and Dragons, they'll always be like, oh, it's collaborative storytelling and all those kinds of things. And I'm like, oh, why do you do this? It's not that. If you're doing that, then you're tossing the game out the window, and you're just having drama time, which is fine. Like, people can do that if they want to, but like, that's not what the rules cover. Like, all they're doing is they're just selling you a bunch of fluff, and then telling you to not look at what the game actually is. I get mega triggered by that, so I apologize.
Yeah, and I've used that one before. Unfortunately, just because it's a lot of it's how I've explained to my normie friends or my parents what we're doing. Yeah. Just because it's a simple thing that they can all understand, but I'll say role-playing, D&D specifically, is collaborative storytelling in the same way that professional wrestling is collaborative storytelling. It's technically correct, but it misses a very, very broad portion of what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could go with that.
And as my good friend Luau Lu points out in the chat here, there are systems that let you do just that, but D&D is not one of them.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of times people even refer to games like Powered by the Apocalypse games as being story games, and I don't even find that to be an appropriate way of looking at it. Those are still very distinctly role-playing games. They just allow the player to have some kind of authority over what different outcomes they're going to have, depending on what the role is. So, still an RPG.
And one of the things that Wizards has kind of done to itself at this point, with a lot of the Critical Role influence, I don't want to seem like I'm bashing them too much. I've never watched Critical Role. I don't particularly care for it. It doesn't really appeal to what I like about the game or fantasy in general. But I can't say that I hate it or hate any of the people on it. The fans annoy me, but
I've listened to about 70 or 80 episodes of Critical Role.
Gotcha.
And I would not want to play in that game personally.
Mm-hmm.
and I don't particularly like the cast members as people. Like I don't dislike them, but I don't have any particular like likeness for them or anything, other than some of the characters that they played as voice actors. Like Travis Willingham. I always loved Full Metal Alchemist, and he played Roy Mustang. So, whenever I saw that he was on there, I was like, okay, I'm interested. I will check that out. And then there were a few other characters that like was it Sam and Liam? They both played in Dot Hack GU game. But in any case, it's clearly not my cup of tea, and they definitely have a very interesting fan base. The fan base is eating itself right now, and I'm just kind of looking on, mischievously enjoying the carnage.
But one thing that I found interesting about a lot of this kind of newer crop of they call themselves fans. What a lot of them are, and I'm not trying to be that I'm not trying to be Thaco the Clown, which they have now introduced. But a lot of these people who are calling themselves fans, what they are really is dilettantes. They're here because Stranger Things mentioned Dungeons and Dragons, and that got a whole bunch of people thinking about it, and Critical Role got super popular, and so there are people who otherwise would not be here who now want to be involved in, or not even really involved in, they just want to be able to talk about RPGs on Twitter, so it seems like they are into the hip, cool thing, but they're not sticking, and Wizards is not putting out things that are creating like sticky fandoms. These people are going to go away in a few years when all of this, stops being cool or stops being in the zeitgeist. Whenever Stranger Things is canceled and the Critical Role people decide to do something else with their time, these people are going to go away. And who's going to be left? And one thing that I think the OSR is doing better is here's more varied things, more interesting things that are going to get people involved who are going to stay involved. And all sides of the OSR, I think, are doing this really well. Even I know there's conflict as to who counts or who does what. But everyone who is using that term OSR, what I think they're doing really well is they're creating interesting products that are getting people to pay attention and stay longer than they normally would. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that the OSR is doing a particularly good job of that, or what do you think about that?
Well, there's a reason that I fell in love with the OSR, and I've basically turned my back on not all modern RPGs necessarily, just modern D&D for the most part, just because it is making they are offering such profound things. I mean, 5e and modern D&D is the mainstream common denominator, just gray slush, that they're just feeding everybody. And then you're able to look at some really, really interesting things in not necessarily just the OSR, but just indie TTRPGs, period. It's just that I tend to find that the ones in the OSR tend to be better quality for my purposes. A lot of times you see a lot of stuff in the indie scene outside of the OSR, and it tends to be really artsy and just kind of bizarre. And as far as like actual gameable content, it doesn't really seem, in my opinion, to hold that much merit. Or it's something that maybe you can play for like a session and then you never touch it again. Whereas with the stuff in the OSR, I have worlds that I can play in that are genuinely the thing that your family should have been afraid of whenever you were growing up. Not the oh my gosh, I just looked at the monster manual and it talks about how demons and devils work and stuff like that. No, we're talking about like Lamentations of the Flame Princess stuff where you've got some truly, nightmarish things happening, and it's just awful. And, I don't want to have people come over my house and open the wrong book sometimes because they will not like what they see, like my Carcosa book, for instance, or Death, Love, Doom. Actually, I don't have that in physical, and I don't know that I'm going to get it in physical because that one is a little bad. But yeah, I mean, and where do I find that kind of stuff? I find it in the OSR, with Chalt, Vendor Satanis's stuff, Yep. It is gonzo weirdness, but at the same time, it is genuinely good stuff that you can run a good game with. And a lot of that is that, they're taking tried and true design philosophies and methods and things like that, and they're innovating with those rather than just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so you get a taste for the absurd and the strange while still getting something that is functional and practical, and it works. It's great. And I see what you're saying about people that are going to stick around. They're going to have that for them. And literally, one of the games that I had been complaining about for a long time was a game that basically the DM ended up just saying to me recently that he was frustrated because what all of this epic fantasy that we do, he's run a game for a year now, and then he has the big bad guy that he's been looking forward to introducing the characters to for all this time, and then the characters are just these defiant little shits that are just like, oh, you're nothing, we don't care about you, we're just gonna kill the shit out of you and lol all day. And so he's like, I should be able to have a game where the bad guy is actually intimidating in some way, and that they don't assume that they're just going to be able to trounce the ever-loving hell out of him. And, so I'm slowly winning him to the dark side of the OSR, with these promises of games where, yeah, you can drop dead with a single few bad die rolls. And, those people are going to come. They're going to come. Some of them will be won over by the other genre types, or maybe a few will go to like a Warhammer Fantasy 4th Edition or something like that. But I think a hell of a lot of them are going to say, well, I kind of like the D&D engine, but I kind of wish it was a little bit more brutal. And then they go off in that direction, or I kind of wish it was a little bit more weird or fairy-like, or whatever. Death metal like if you want your Morkborgs.
Yeah. But there's one thing that continuously kind of holds people back from realizing there's more to this than just D&D, and that's the terminally online weirdos who are demanding that every RPG road has to lead to 5th edition or D&D at some point, and that D&D has to be the end-all and be-all of RPGs. Do you ever watch DM Bloodworth stuff on YouTube?
We're buds.
He's going to be on in a few weeks, but you saw that debate he did, right? And I can't remember who he debated, but it
was J. Scott Garibay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That conversation was interesting to me because the whole notion of you need to play 5e because whether you like it or not, there's no RPGs without 5e. I don't understand that line of thinking at all. Like, there are other games exist. If you want that, you play those other games, but you see the same thing in in movies, on TV shows. It's the reason why everything that you loved in your childhood now has to be changed, because it's not enough to have this piece of media has what I want in it. No, this piece of media has to have what I want in it and be popular. Is the thing that so many people are demanding. And I just find that whole discourse to be beyond comprehension, and really it's the thing that's like tearing the community, the thing that's tearing RPG fans apart.
I felt your internal cringing whenever you said the word community.
Yeah. This notion that because D&D is the most popular thing, it has to be everything to everyone. I really don't understand that mindset.
No, I don't either. Clearly, they didn't grow up being accustomed to being one of the few people that liked something, and then just getting used to having maybe one or two people to share that thing with. Growing up where I did, it was not very common to have people that liked death metal and just hardcore rock and I don't know, just like nerdy stuff in general. It just wasn't a big common thing. So I kind of got accustomed to being one of the few that's like, yeah, I know what Final Fantasy is. I know what an anime is. This is back before, people in high school knew what that shit was. I
Yeah.
was like one of three people in my grade that knew what that was. And damn it, you get used to it not being popular. Then once it gets popular, you're like, what the hell happened? My special thing,
Yeah.
my brand, it's been taken.
Yeah, when it's really the people who want their thing to be the popular thing and are apoplectic when it's not. What they don't understand is we're nerds. We we were used to being the only person who knew anything about whatever it was that we knew anything about. We're used to it. We don't need our interests to be in the zeitgeist, and then when they are, everything ends up kind of moving away from where we liked it. It's you're in our territory, basically.
Yeah.
You've entered our world, and if you're going to mess it up, we're gonna be upset. Sure, you see a lot of that, but you're also seeing people just being like, you know what? I don't need to play something that has a D, an ampersand, and a D on it. I'm gonna go play this other thing. You guys can, I surrender this to the Vandals. I'm gonna go over here and make something awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's actually gotten to the point that it's refreshing to play an old school game, or really just anything that's not D&D Fifth Edition, because of the fact that whenever we show up at the table, we all have kind of the same general idea of what we're going to be doing. Because like you said, people try to make everything fall under the net of Fifth Edition D&D.
Yeah.
It means that you don't know exactly what you're showing up to whenever you're coming together. And sometimes, there have been times that I have been incredibly explicit about letting people know what my game is going to be like, and they don't even read the damn thing. They just want to try and show up and play, and then they get shocked whenever it's like, oh, you actually want us to do some exploring instead of just just talk in character. Oh, you don't want to take my backstory and incorporate it into this entire campaign, like it's some kind of recurring thing, and you don't want to do all that kind of stuff. No, you want me to instead focus on what we can do at the table. You're not going to just tell me a story and let me make a few choices here and then.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, but whenever you say, hey, guys, we're going to be playing Morkborg, it's like, oh, okay, so we're going to show up, we're going to die, probably. It's going to be fun. Same thing with Call of Cthulhu. It's like, yeah, okay, we have a pretty good idea of what that means. At this point, 5e is just like whatever the fuck people feel like, and it's kind of a shame. I do like the fact that it's not going to be hard for me anytime soon to join a game. And that's partially probably quite a bit due to the overwhelming current success of 5th edition. But the quality of the game is something that has to come into question. And, I have noticed there are a hell of a lot of people that will try the game for maybe a few months. They'll think it's really cool, and then they'll put it down and never play it again.
We just got raided.
Raided?
We've been invaded. The Burt coin brought a party.
Uh-oh. Well, good thing that I had a few henchmen, guarding, the campsite. So, they should be having some burning coals tossed in their heads and things like that.
Yep, we got Crafty Matt Craft and Luau Lu here in chat with the Raiders coming in. So, but yeah, these guys have come in before, so the coiners are always welcome here. But Lou made a good point in here talking about the 2000s. Neither of us were playing at this point, but there was a time where this weird OGL D20 craze took hold, and every single game company was just like, here is everything with the D&D rules. Oh, we got a lot of people. The continuous for anyone listening on audio, and for Aaron, if you have not seen the show, the continuous noise that you're hearing and the Doc Holliday popping up in the corner is people following, which I welcome. So guys, thank you. But there was this time where everything kind of lost its flavor because everyone was trying to make all of their systems fit into the D20 rule system. And if we can avoid that at all with 5e, I'm really glad that there's this... I'm not going to say that word. This infrastructure of other systems, other people who are running these different kinds of games, be they OSR, be they Savage Worlds, another favorite of mine. There's all these other great systems that have healthy fan bases where people can go and find other games so that everything doesn't end up being 5th edition like it was in... or like everything was 3rd edition or 3.5 in 2004, 2005, 2006, right around there, which really, I believe that's where the OSR kind of started, was everyone getting tired of playing the D20 system.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I understood is, they realized, hey, with this OGL thing, I could actually just reproduce some of that old stuff for people that don't have it anymore or never had it in the first place, and then we can make adventures and reference that instead. And so, we have the greats like Matt Finch, and I think Chris Gonerman had some stuff with that with his Basic Fantasy RPG as well. But yeah, so they did tremendous things for the gaming hobby, and gotta thank them for what they did.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now. One thing that... Sorry, I completely just lost my train of thought there for a second. Had a raiding party come in, and suddenly everything just goes out the window. But no, one thing that someone mentions here, there are thousands of RPGs out there. If I could encourage anyone, even people who are turned off by the more abrasive elements of the OSR movement, or whatever your hang-up may be, if you want to run... your options are not OSR and 5e. Your options are limitless at this point. So if you want to run an adventure game where you guys are playing like teenagers, kids, I am going to push you very, very hard towards Luau Lu's game Dare Luck Club, not just because he's here, but because it's an awesome system for that kind of thing. If you want to run your kind of story-based weird romance game about romancing a monarch, you can play For the Queen, or any other variation of that. You can play Vampire. There's a game for you out there. You don't have to make it all fit in 5e, and you don't have to demand that Wizards of the Coast make it all fit in 5e, because they're trying to do that right now and it's not working. And yes, Kids on Bikes does exist, password denied 7, but we're talking about Dare Luck Club here because I like it better.
I'll have to check that out.
It's a great game. I'm gonna say this because it's my show, but I did an interview with Luau Lu not too terribly long ago where we talked extensively about it. So a lot of the rundown is available there. Lou, is it on drive-thru? Is it available for people to get on drive-thru right now? Awesome. So yes, if that game sounds interesting to you, drive-thru RPG, Dare Luck Club, I'll put it in chat so you can read it. For those of you who can't understand what I'm saying, which shouldn't be most of you, I think I pronounce words very well. But yes, there we go. So yeah, one question that I forgot to ask you at the beginning of the show that people are going to kill me if I don't end up asking you, and this has nothing to do with anything, this is completely out of the blue, but everyone has to be asked this question when they come on the show. And the answer to this question can be as philosophical or as sophomoric as you want it to be. Aaron, if you could put anything on a t-shirt, what would it be?
Cure for cancer.
Just the words cure for cancer or the actual
No, the actual cure for cancer. Like the formula.
Okay.
Just put if I could do anything, I'd be like, yeah, let's do that one. Cancer's a bitch. We'll just nip that in the bud. Just all of them. All the cancer, It goes bye-bye.
Now I'm just picturing some scientist at like a Goodwill, just like looking through the shirt rack being like, it's right here. It's just right here on the shirt.
All this time, a little thrift shop in Idaho. What the fuck?
Just walks into the lab the next day. Guys, it's here. It's on this shirt.
I'm pretty sure that if we manage to get this burrito stain off, we should be able to make out the rest of the formula.
Or even worse, they're just like looking high and low for the cure for cancer. They're running all these models on their computers, and then someone just opens up Redbubble, and they're like, someone's got a shop selling it right now. What color do you want?
Oh, man.
That's a great answer. We haven't had an answer like that in quite some time. People have similarly played around with the rules, but that's going on the record books. I love that.
Thank you.
So when it comes to your content, where can people find you? What are you typically doing every week? What does content from Aaron the Pedantic? I always put an N in that word where it's not. What does content from Aaron the Pedantic look like on a week-to-week basis?
Well, I'm not the most regular dude as far as my programming goes. Once a month, I do Gonzo Up Your Ass, which is a show with Venger Satanis, where we talk about Gonzo, metal, and typically 80s movies. A lot of times, we kind of devolve into just talking about movies. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, and we have a good time. We do that once a month on a Tuesday, and usually it just depends on what Tuesday is convenient for both of us. So that one's kind of up in the air a lot. I do videos pretty much whenever I get the inclination, which means I'll probably do at least once a week. Basically just kind of depends on how busy my week is. And usually my videos are going to be looking at products that are OSR, commentary on some of the scuttlebutt in the role-playing game community. Like recently we were talking about the TSR debacle. We were talking about what was the other one? Somebody being upset about a lack of content warnings on Vaesen, the new Free League RPG. Stuff like that, which one person has very kindly said that Aaron the Pedantic is a guy that complains about things nobody cares about, and I will wear that with a badge of honor. Other than that, I occasionally give some advice whenever I find there's something useful that I was able to pull off, even with my meager years of experience, or whenever I've found a useful tool or something like that. I like to share it. But mostly I just like to talk about cool stuff and things that I appreciate. Like I've just been kind of fanboying over first edition AD&D because it's my first time really giving it a genuine try. So, I talk about my readings of the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player Handbook, and I'll be talking about my upcoming Greyhawk game that I'm going to be running starting in January, and there'll probably be some campaign diaries and stuff like that. I do have a blog, but I don't post on it very much anymore, so I need to get back to it. And I'm not one of the very insightful bloggers, so It's not a good vlog, but it does exist, and you can find that also on my YouTube channel. There's a link to it there. I talk a lot of shit on Twitter, so people can find me there. What else? I have been working on modules that I've written, and I'll be publishing those again soon. I published and then took them down because I found something that it's kind of complicated. But long story short, I thought I was going to die of COVID. I was like certain I was going to die of COVID, so I was like, I need to publish this now. And then I was like, oh wait, I didn't die, and this actually ended up being kind of crappy, so I'm going to take it down, and then I'm going to put it back up later whenever it looks better. So yeah, that's pretty much it though. So there will be modules to look forward to if people like stuff that's a little bit grim and sometimes bloody and crazy. Then they might like some of the stuff I write.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone's looking for recommendations of where to start, the most recent stream that Aaron did about the TSR most recent controversy that he mentioned, that's a good one. How AD&D can be better for you than 5e D&D, that's a great one. The Strixhaven conversation, I thought that was pretty awesome. And then my personal favorite recently was How Dare That Mob Boss and the New Player's PC. That was a great conversation. That whole article situation making the rounds online, that was just... I read the story and I was just like, well, of course. Of course that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What can you say though? There are people that they just have different expectations, and what killed me about that was that the player actually seemed to have taken it better than a lot of the people that reacted to it.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I will say, and I said this with Hanker and Fernell on, and he agreed with me, this is good advice for anyone just starting out in RPGs. You're not going to fully understand this hobby unless you play, you can play your super powerful 5e game where you've got everything, but then you should also play a game that's on the other opposite end where your character starts out in poverty and has to really scrap their way up to the top. You need to find your outermost limits of this is the far extreme of how powerful you can be, and this is how lowly and beat down your character can be. And then find the place in the middle where you like your game.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many people who only play the powerful. No one really plays only the poverty games except for the people who started out in the 70s. But no one, modern players tend to just kind of lean on the powerful, and you really need that other side. Even if you never want to play another OSR game again, you need to know what it is and what it's like, just for one session. Just to know the breadth of what this hobby can offer. So anyone out there who is not sold on OSR, or you think that we're being mean, making fun of you for being so precious about your character, play one of these games and see what you think about it. Then come back and you can continue telling me that I'm a jackass, or maybe just maybe you'll come around to my point of view and think that I'm right. But, at least know what's out there. Know the options that you have.
Absolutely. That's a large part of what got me to try the OSR to begin with. Was typically whenever people tell me something's bad, I want to look at it and see if they're right, and I want to challenge whether or not it's actually bad. And people said, AD&D was overcomplicated, and nobody likes the old school stuff because it's too easy to die and your characters don't matter and all this kind of stuff. So I had to go and try that, and then I got into the OSR. Then what everybody made fun of in the OSR? They made fun of Dungeon World. So you know what I tried next?
Dungeon
World. Yeah. And you know what? It's not that bad. It's its own thing. I think it's important to just try try different stuff, and don't knock it till you try it. Generally speaking, there's some things I'll knock before trying, but RPGs are generally not one of them.
Hmm. If you ever hear me speaking ill of something I haven't seen or played or anything like that, generally what I am knocking is the fans of that thing. I'll put that out there. I have never really been interested in BTS and having listened to one, or being forced at gunpoint by Google to listen to one of their songs
Oh God.
on loop in one of their commercials. I don't particularly care for it, but I was rolling my eyes at them before I ever heard one song because of their fans. And it's the same with some of those RPGs. So I'll put that out there.
Yeah, people will turn you off on certain things, and I think that's why the OSR does get a bad rap sometimes, is because that effect does play into some people's experiences. They'll have their conversation about their favorite tiefling bard and how much they love that character, and then there'll be somebody from my neck of the woods that's going to say, "Wow, y'all are stupid. This character is ridiculous. Like, you made a deal with the devil, or you've got devil blood in you. So like, why would you be accepted by the rest of the community or whatever?" And then they're like, "Oh my God, that's what people are like over there." It's you will have those things happen, and I will say that if you turn away some of those things just because of those kinds of bad experiences, then you might miss out on something neat. But on the other hand, sometimes you can look at something like just a very brief glimpse and say, "That's not for me," and that's fine.
Yeah,
I can pull that off. The big thing for me was I had tried a combat heavy game. I had tried at that point an old school game, and then here was the narrativist game. And I was like, okay, I need to try that at least once and see what happens. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and honestly, just that's the best advice I can give to anyone. And even RPGs are a hobby where so many of us buy books we never play. So even like just get the PDF and read the book at the very least before you throw stones. That's all we're asking.
100%. I mean, there are a ton of really cool mechanical resolutions and concepts that you can pull from games that you'll never even touch. Mm-hmm. Like you'll never sit at the table and actually use that game. But there are things that you can pull from just some little scribbling that one of these pretentious game designers wrote down that actually sparks your imagination and gives you an idea for how to handle a situation that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And then next thing you know, your game is more enriched for having, had that exposure.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, like one thing, even just reading 3-2-1 Action and Rocket to Russia that John McGuire just put out, I took the idea of fill a plot hole in 2 sentences, and you can do it as long as it makes sense. I took that, and I'm going to use that in my games, regardless of the situation. If you can explain to me how you're able to do something, or why you should, especially in like a DCC context where skills are not strictly codified, if you can give me 2 sentences why you should be able to roll that as a trained skill check, and it tracks with me, then yeah, we're gonna do that. And that came from 3-2-1 Action, which I have not run yet. I hope to run it someday.
Yeah. I get the feeling. It's hard to get those games together sometimes, and we're not gonna. It's a sad reality. Like I had purchased, I don't know, I cannot remember which book it was, but I was like, I looked back at my catalog of books, and I was thinking, okay, how many have I played over the last year? And then it's like, okay, maybe like 3 out of all of these. Yep. Those the ones I've actually gotten to sit down and play a full campaign of. And I'm like, and now I have like 18 more. So that's like 6 more years, and that's if I were to play all of them and be very ardent little hobbyists. So like there is just legitimately a point where it's just physically freaking impossible to be able to play all these games, but you can still learn from a lot of them.
And one last piece of advice to leave for those of you who are going to be trying an OSR game for the first time. As Fictive Fun pointed out here in chat, character gen is very fast in OSR games. There's a reason behind that. You can show up with a 7-page backstory if you really, really want to. But your GM is going to look at it and laugh. And when that character is set on fire in a funnel, just because I'm assuming you're going to play DCC, because that's what we've been talking about this whole time. When your farmer who picked up a sword gets set on fire by something in the dungeon, and you're like, but 7-page backstory. Remember what I told you.
Yeah, you shouldn't even give them names.
Yeah.
If you're playing DCC funnel,
don't give them a name until they survive.
Right. Yeah, if they get through the funnel. And I will say, if anybody that looks at DCC, don't look at the funnel and think that is the game, because it is a cool and fun gimmick. It's a cool way to create a character and have a shared history with the rest of your party that unfolded at the table and turns out really interesting. But at the same time, the greatness of the system doesn't fully come into play until level 1 at the bare minimum, because then you start getting a taste for what makes it really awesome, and it just gets better and better and better.
Oh yeah. Cool. So as per usual, as we reach the end of our time here, I'm going to turn this over to you to tell everyone where they can find you, social media, all that stuff. So Aaron, go ahead. You talked about the shows that you do, but everything else, the floor is yours.
So, you can find me on YouTube, Aaron the Pedantic. I don't remember what my URL is, but if you search for Aaron the Pedantic, I'm pretty sure you'll find me. Otherwise, I also am technically on Twitch, but I usually don't use it unless I'm streaming video game streams, which I don't do terribly often. I just do it every now and then. You can find me on Twitter. It's at CHA, like charisma, _NEG, like negative. So at CHA_NEG. So that's my Twitter, where you can find a lot of stuff there. And then it's aaron.rpa.blogspot. Wait, hold on. aaronrpa.blogspot.com. That's my blog.
Awesome. And I cannot wait to jump into the chat of one of your live streams. I just hope I can catch one on time to do so.
I'm a terrible streamer. I stream at completely random times, and nobody knows when it's going to happen until right before it happens, usually. So, awesome. Literally what I will do is, my Discord. People should check out my Discord, because that's basically, we have an OSR Discord. We have a rule, people do not discuss any kind of politics or anything like that on the Discord. We're just there to talk about games. And people can find a link to that on my channel, my YouTube channel, in the link in the description in a lot of my videos. And if you go on there, then, we run public games on there. And occasionally, we don't do a whole lot, but that's where I'm going to be running my Greyhawk game. And we talk about a lot of games. And occasionally, I invite people that are on the Discord to join in on the streams. So a lot of times what will happen is I'll just tag people that have a certain role in the server, and then I'll just say, hey, who wants to join my stream today? And then we'll get one person, or we'll get 5 people, or we'll get 10. Just you never know. So we have fun though.
Awesome. I need to jump on that Discord.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a tendency to look at Discord and just start twitching, because I'm a person who doesn't like to see lots of notifications, and there's no getting around that on Discord. But I do like a good, healthy Discord community where everyone's just there to talk about gaming. So,
yeah, occasionally I gotta put the foot down in a Lady Dimitrescu style, but for the most part, they're pretty good about managing themselves.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, it's been great having you on the show. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can, do something like this again at some point. Just to let everyone know what's coming up here in the immediate future. Next week, David Beatty from Stiff Whisker Press is going to be on to talk again about Weird Frontiers. So for anyone in chat who is unfamiliar with Weird Frontiers, it is DCC with a Weird West flavor to it. So if you want to run Dungeon Crawl Classics but cowboys, Weird Frontiers is your game.
I've had my eye on that.
It's a ton of fun. It really is like a really cool system. It's got a lot of Lovecraft influence, a lot of direct Lovecraft influence. It is a fantastic Weird West game, though.
Yep, he'll have to shut up and take my money.
Absolutely. And then at some point, sometime in the near future, hopefully this week, but who knows, I will be doing an unboxing of Batman the Animated Series Adventures. I've got it behind me. You can see the very top of one of the boxes just over my shoulder. But we'll be taking a look at that because God knows I haven't made enough videos on it. And that Kickstarter was long and brutal for a lot of people, so we are going to discuss it some point in the future. And the last thing to shout out is this Friday I'm going to be recording with Luau Lu and company on This Old Dungeon. I will let you guys know when that goes up because it's a podcast, not a live show, but that's going to be happening this weekend. And to let everyone know what's coming up there, the topic is Dark Sun, and Dungeon Crawl Classics will be brought up again. So that's what we got going for all you boneheads out there. Until then, guys, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I am so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you guys next time.
Peace out, everybody.